Mr. Durham, let me start with you. You kicked us off, so maybe just go on. I kept hearing you talk about valorizing and valorizing and valorizing. Am I understanding valorizing the same way you do? What do you think so far we have done very well in driving the right infrastructure, policy, strategies for this IK-based innovation sector and for the valorization of our indigenous knowledge? You need to sing.
There we go. Great, you can hear me. Thanks very much. Great question. Valorizing, what is it, and how are we doing? So, this can be a longer story. I'll try and keep it as short as possible. But South Africa has a troubled past, and part of that is the ignoring of the wealth of indigenous knowledge as a key part of the culture of South Africa. And it was ignored, and it was bypassed, and the value of this incredible knowledge wealth that we had was not enabled in taking things forward. So by valorization, I mean deriving value from this indigenous knowledge system. Value comes in many different ways. Pride can be a value. I am proud of our indigenous knowledge heritage, the cultures that we have in South Africa. So pride is one aspect, but certainly what we are also trying to focus on is the technology and the technology innovation of this indigenous knowledge. I'm from the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, so unfortunately I do have a fairly narrow scope, but we're looking at developing products and services and systems that enable indigenous knowledge products to reach the market and have a fair opportunity at gaining value, gaining traction in the market, and ultimately having the socio-economic impact that I talked to. So I would like to think in terms of the priorities that we have done exceptionally well. I really think this is focusing both on the strategic priorities of South Africa, but it's also looking at a system that it certainly has the difficulties in interfacing with the science systems, and that we'll be talking more about today. But we have started the process. We have developed a model which is Ubuntu-based, and it is inclusive and consultative, and it is a system that we can genuinely apply, that people will subscribe to, that we need to develop and mainstream, that will also gain political traction. Political traction is critically important in South Africa for the science system, because South Africa is not yet investing adequately in the science system that we have. And I like to think that this indigenous knowledge valorization will demonstrate very clearly why South Africa needs to invest more in science, technology, and innovation.
But do we agree on what that indigenous knowledge is? I suspect we might not even have a common understanding and appreciation of what that. Do you believe we at least have that consensus? Or what did we say in 1994? Sufficient consensus.
So another great question. Indigenous knowledge, as I said, ranges across all aspects of our life. And the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation cannot deal with all of those areas. Our mandate is science, technology and innovation. So what we are looking to do, and my colleagues at Science, Technology and Innovation, that's Ank Chabalala, Andile Grootboom and Mamone Tang, who are the leaders in this area in our department, can talk more specifically to it. But we are looking for economic opportunities to valorize indigenous knowledge. So it's not a specific definition, it's broad, but it's focusing on what can have technological innovation that will have ultimately socioeconomic impact.
And is it interdepartmental, or is it something that you find remains in this narrow lane of DSTI?
So at this stage, it is quite narrow, but the point is this should be impacting all aspects of government. So it should be impacting agriculture. It should be impacting health. It should be impacting the presidency. It should be impacting trade, industry, and competition. So it should have a broader impact, but because this is at a fairly early stage, there is limited impact still at this stage, but it is our job in this room and broader, that we need to demonstrate the value of this so government collectively can respond. It's not just the Department Science, Technology and Innovation, but it is all department, it's all government, and ultimately it's all society.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strahan. Durham, sorry. Dr. Rakeshni, I saw you nodding very eagerly when he was speaking. He mentioned something about South Africans not appreciating what we have. Is that something that our education system can solve, or maybe is it the reason that our education system was never about us appreciating what we have?
Thank you, Program Director. I think to build on what Ben says, I think IKS has primarily been viewed as heritage preservation for far too long. And it goes beyond that. It actually sits on the margins of an innovation economy, the IKS economy that Ank would speak of. And it's about not just mainstream bioeconomy, and Ben has led the development of the bioeconomy strategy. It's about pharmaceutical innovation. It's about nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals, agriculture, climate adaptation technologies, digital knowledge technologies. I mean, we all grew up without access to modern medicine. When you had the flu, what did your granny give you? For us, it's turmeric, ginger, honey. You know, you make this concoction in your kitchen. And now we're saying, can we convert that into a value-added product that sells? Because people are hungry for non-conventional medicines, for a holistic, integrated approach. And South Africa, along with Africa and if you look at China and India, South America, we have the richest reservoirs of biodiversity and indigenous knowledge systems. So our challenge is no longer whether or not IKS has value. That has been proven. Our challenge is about bringing together the skills, bringing together policies, institutions, and regulatory systems to scale what we have. We've seen this with China and India. They have the most vibrant nutraceutical industry, and that's because government has stepped in and nurtured this infant industry into a robust, thriving economy.
But you mentioned in China, pardon the interruption, which is almost, if you like, monolithic culturally. In South Africa, you mentioned turmeric and this, and you go to Venda, you'll find other kinds of treatment for flu. Do you believe that we have enough, shall I say, common dashboard to be able to download all these diverse forms of indigenous knowledge to be able to make them work for us on a commercial scale?
You know, this is where, South Africa is not lagging behind. We're at that cusp, that threshold where we can catapult ourselves into a thriving economy. And at that threshold, I think we can model ourselves against best practices. As an example, there is a traditional knowledge digital library, which can tap into the different benefits of different roots and branches and medicinal products, And you can check what the NCE is, the new chemical entities, so that you can check it's patented, it's gone through its regulatory process. Are we steering towards that? Maybe that's something we need to do, so that we do have a repository for us to start unpacking and value adding what Ben is saying around what indigenous knowledge systems has to offer us.
Yeah, but Doctor, let me just push back a little. During COVID,
Yes.
something tragic happened. We had talk about Lengana in South Africa, something that people already knew could treat the symptoms that were there in COVID. And as you know, in disease management, we treat symptoms effectively. And it was treated like this snake oil, nonsensical, non-existent basis. And I didn't hear scientists say, wait a minute, let's go and find out if this Lengana really works. Not at the Department of Health level, not at academia. And I looked up something and I found that a Chinese doctor had already received a Nobel Prize for medicine for using the same thing to treat malaria. Now, to me, that was scandalous that not a single academic stood up and said, why are you dismissing this? While we wait for vaccination and whatever, why can't we go indigenous? I mean, that to me, if that wasn't indication of how pathetic we are in appreciating what we have, what is? I don't know. You want to talk?
I'm going to hear you. I hear you. And there were a number of challenges around COVID. And, there was this whole push around people claiming territory over vaccines, vaccine sovereignty. And I think this is where skills plays a key role. Because there is an appreciation in those countries that have strong IKS-based systems, for having equal importance on traditional medicine as they are to conventional medicine. So when we train skills, we're always pushing for our PhDs. We're not looking at the entrepreneurs who can package this. We're also not looking at traditional medicine practitioners. Because if we build that credibility and we start building that pipeline of practitioners, we are then creating a diverse workforce and a diverse solution-based approach to epidemics and pandemics.
Okay, Ms. Maseko, I see you reaching for your mic. We are talking policies and strategies here. Strategy is about a roadmap, is about a game plan that will help you to win. And that starts with goal setting and ensuring that we are working towards the same objective. How are we doing in that regard?
Good morning.
After all, you're from the campus, right? By the campus, I mean the DTIC campus.
So good morning, colleagues. And Chairperson, you are not fair. You just take me to project management so that I can pact what is it that I'm doing there. But before I answer your question, I wanted to dovetail on 3 things that has been said starting from yesterday. Raz again yesterday made a very good point. I liked his presentation when he was talking about how we are deindustrializing as a country, right? Our economy is stagnant. And there are many reasons why that is happening. But the take home from that point is that we then need new reforms. We need new industries. As Rakeshni has said, we need infant industries that can support our economy, right? That's the first.
What are these infant industries? I'll allow you to continue.
Yeah, in whatever form. I'll go to them right now. So now you have disturbed the train.
Okay, apologies.
Sorry.
When I hear words I don't know, I like to stop and say,
so
what does that mean?
Infant industries just mean industries that are born of the country. Things that we can start from scratch ourselves, support, and grow. That's what infant industry means. Now, what a point I wanted to make is that we have to realize that IK is a knowledge form, right? There are many knowledge forms that can be used to then create these industries. That's the first thing. And IK then goes into many, and how the DTIC has structured the sectors for support. A lot of IK knowledge, indigenous knowledge, can go into those particular sectors. Now, coming to your question, you are right. We have not really sat down and say, how then are we driving, let's say, in cosmetics industries? We have a cosmetics center. But what is the knowledge that comes from this sector that can really build these particular products such that we can develop this sector end? So you find that when it happens, it's almost like a guesswork. It's a finder kind of thing, because on one side you have the knowledge forms, and on one side you have the sectors. And there has not been a direct line of how really do you drive specific products, specific industries, exports, such that then you can draw from that particular knowledge. So we have strategies, but 9 out of 10 times they don't really have those particular value chains that are direct.
So we have all the cards, all the aces, everything we need. We are not shuffling them right. Who should shuffle these cards right?
So we are, people in this room are the ones that we should, right? And I think the conversation is starting to unfold in that manner. In a sense that, as I'm talking about knowledge forms on one side and talking about products on the other, in the middle, you have commercialization strategies, right? Which commercialization does not necessarily belong to one organization. That's the first one. Secondly, commercialization of certain products need different incentives or different interventions for it to land where it needs to land, right? So people in the room are the starters of the conversation. But our seniors, in terms of driving strategic mandates, are also the ones that need to be in the forefront, because if we want to say we want to build, let's say, an industry in electric vehicle, it's gonna be the seniors that say that's where we are all going, and it's gonna be us in the room that says what are the strategies for us to really land on that particular vehicle.
Yeah. But I'm saying countries of the world that have really led in innovation have something in common. What is that? With regard to shuffling the cards correctly, every story has its own General Mkhwanazi, who rattles the cage and upsets the apple cart. And then it needs a Madlanga commission that will shuffle them and say, okay, this is who did what. But then you must get the judiciary that will then, well, with the prosecution, and then you need the SIU to recover the money, and then you need the treasury to manage the recovered money in a way that it goes where it should have gone, and then you need oversight to make sure we don't repeat the cycle that will get us to Madlanga 2.0 in about 10 years' time. Surely these countries that have led innovation, like Singapore, have something going for them. I want to know, what is that? What is that magic pill? It's not really a magic pill, but what is that key ingredient that creates the framework? Dr. Temu, you seem to be deep in thought. I suspect you have answers, or some answers.
Thanks, Chairperson. Before I answer your question about what are other countries up about, maybe I need to, because the discussion is centered around indigenous knowledge and indigenous medicines. I need to first indicate that the principle in terms of medicine regulation, the principle of...
All right, Dr. Tembo, they say they can't, they are recording, so they are not hearing you.
Am I not?
That's much better.
Okay. The principle of indigenous knowledge medicines practice originally was centered around, a patient or individual interaction with a healer or a practitioner. And in that way, as the regulator, SAHPRA, we do not come in there. But with the emergence of the need to commercialize these products, the SAPRA as the regulator now becomes involved. And currently as the country, we do not have a framework that would enable us to can start regulating and control these products. We also need to be cognizant of the complexities of these products, as well as the sensitive nature that is around the traditional healing practice and the whole traditional medicines process. Now, in the event that SAPRA is, or South Africa is going to regulate, which the process have started by working on the groundwork, in the event that South Africa is going to regulate these products, like any other medicines, as the authority, we are more focused on public safety, where we look at the safety of the product, whether it's going to do what it's intended to do, and whether it complies with safety standards. And for us to achieve those three pillars, we are always more leaning towards scientific validation. But coming to indigenous medicines, unfortunately, not everything will be based on scientific validation. We have indigenous knowledge holders who are individuals somewhere. Some of them are even older, and we need to tap into that before it's too late. Now, in the process of developing that regulations and validating the processes to ensure the safety, quality, and efficacy of these products, we also need not forget the knowledge holders. And in the process that we are going to undertake about framework development, there will be some interactions at different levels with all stakeholders included, including the knowledge holders, and there will be what is called the socio-economic impact assessment studies. And everybody will be urged to participate so that you influence how the policy is going to turn up. Because currently I cannot say, I don't even know how that policy is going to end up coming out as well. Regarding what other countries are doing, like I'm saying, we recently just started the process, and the SAPRA has put together a team. Some members are here on the floor who have gone around the world benchmarking on what other countries are doing. And if need be, and more details are required in terms of what their findings were, we can always invite them. They are on the floor to come and just give a brief.
Well, let's do that right now. Do you know any specific person in the audience whose name you can call and they can give us example? No, because I don't want to just talk about a formula and not solve for X. Sometimes it helps to solve for X. What is that which the Singapores of this world, the Indias of this world have done? To be leaders in pharmaceutics, to be leaders in, I mean, I don't know if you know this, sorry, just pun. I don't know if you've checked how many companies on the New York Stock Exchange in the ICT sector are being managed by Indians who were educated in India. Just go and look up, from Microsoft to Sun to Oracle, and it's not an accident. India did something in the ICT space to be able to lead the innovation to the point that even Wall Street companies recognize, if you want somebody to run your company successfully, go to India. Don't get an Indian educated in California. Go to an Indian educated at the India Institute of Technology. I think they call them that, IITs. These are government initiatives that were set up more than 50 years ago to develop a focused, competency-based, skills intensity that has now delivered all these leaders that we know in today. So I'm saying, the people who have been on this benchmarking exercise, can you, from the audience, please, just...
we can call on Prof. Matsabisa.
Please do that. Yeah, Prof, please, bail us out. What have the countries that you have seen that are leading in innovation doing, and what would you say the magic formula is? I know it's not a magic formula. Where's Prof? Oh, there he is. Okay, this side, sir. I'm tired of losing. I mean, we have Roy Falk that could be a world beater that's sitting idle. We've got Rooibos that nearly got owned by some Americans. We have so many indigenous solutions that we are not optimizing, and yet we have unemployment as high as Mount Everest. Prof, please.
Thank you so much.
Somebody's phone is buzzing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chair. I was leading a group of legal minds, doctors, pharmacists, traditional health practitioners, in an effort to begin to say, how do we begin as South Africa to make the 1965 Medicines Act relevant? Because health has changed since 1965. And we then undertook a number of benchmarking. We went to China, we went to Brazil, Ghana, I think Uganda, to begin to understand how they regulate their traditional medicinal products. We provided a report with recommendations, to SAPRA in terms of the possibility of how, one, we could include the regulation of traditional medicines in the current Medicines Act. Two was then to say the current Medicines Act is beyond its sell-by date, and health has changed, and therefore there could be a possibility that we create a new medicines bill in South Africa that would then include, the regulation and the development of traditional medicines. So there were, I think, those benchmarking where we learned how the Chinese regulate Chinese medicine, how Brazil regulates, I think, its traditional medicines, as well as coming back in Africa, looking at what Ghana has done, because Ghana has been said that it has begun to institutionalize traditional medicines. They do have what they call phytomedicine centers, around the hospitals in Ghana. It's not a perfect model, but it was a beginning of where one could start off and say South Africa could learn, and South Africa could then develop its own, I think, system to begin to bring into, I think, the development of traditional medicines. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, now before you sit, thanks, Prof. Before you sit down, did you also take a look at the role of Big Pharma? Because I think Big Pharma can be a big impediment in the game we are trying to win.
Yes, indeed. Brazil has a pharmaceutical company called Fiocruz. It is a government-run, pharmaceutical company, has been focusing on the development of traditional medicines. China has a number of, I think, pharmaceutical companies that are government-run and specifically in the development of traditional medicines. It is unfortunately, I think, not the same here in, Africa and South Africa.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Tembu, before I ask DLRRD to talk, you hear that about government-owned or government-run pharmaceutical companies. Is that not a low-hanging fruit that we are losing? Especially because you talked about knowledge holders who don't always maybe trust the system enough to share their secrets. Would government-run entities not help you?
Yeah. You see, this is one of the things that needs to be considered insofar as policy influencing an amendment can do. But currently, in the country, we don't even have our own labs that we use to test. We are outsourcing a lot of these services. And like I'm saying, when we engage at a broader level during this framework of traditional medicines development, to enable us to regulate. It would also be an opportune time for stakeholders to can put their view forward, suggest such government-owned entities, facilities to be established, and with that there might be some benefits, there might be some risk, but also looking at how we as the government and regulators are pro public health processes. We could use our own and also limit the pricing of these medicines from other pharmaceuticals, because in that way we don't have control. Ours as SAPRA, we don't regulate pricing of a medicine. We regulate the product.
All right. I'm going to come to the DTIC and talk about whether we've just made a monster out of government-owned entities, that even where they could lead, we lose that opportunity. And you, Mr. Durham, at least you are from government departments. Are we too averse when it comes to government ownership? But let me just ask the one panel member who hasn't spoken yet, Dr. Daphne, land reform at the pace it is happening or not happening versus the pressure to drive indigenous knowledge-based innovation. After all, most of these innovations depend on land and land rights and ownership. Please comment on how the framework, the policy strategy framework, is enabling or impeding this drive towards an IK-based innovation sector. And in the meantime, please prepare your questions. I'm coming down to the floor after this. Questions and comments. Go ahead, Dr. Daphne. All right, we need a sound engineer here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think the mic is saying I should not speak. So but yeah, thanks for that question. I think the issue of land is a big issue. So the pace at which the initiatives that are happening are moving may not be at the level that we are expecting it to happen because of, the backlog and all that in terms of the land. But I think we should not really focus more on that. Maybe our focus should also be on the communal land, which is readily available for our indigenous knowledge holders and ourselves as a government and within the NSI to contribute towards building sustainable rural communities where IKS is actually part of what we utilize to drive those initiatives. So specifically, maybe in terms of the issue of the communal, the community property associations, I think that is where now we can also look at in terms of establishing the community trust for benefit sharing of those knowledge holders that are driving some work in those communal places. But maybe let me come back to the area where we are focusing on the IK-based innovation sector. We have a unit in which I'm operating that looks at technology research and development and also driving the IK-based innovation in terms of, a special focus at the moment is more on African traditional medicines and we have looked already at the health infusions technologies, where we worked closely with the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, because we are the younger sister actually. They started this work before we were born, and we are following in terms of the legislations that have already been put in place. We cannot reinvent the wheel. They are actually having a bigger mandate. So, but what we are doing, we are aligning that also to our own policies within the department, which is the Comprehensive Rural Development Program. It is a three-phase approach that is being used, where you initially look at the area of meeting basic human needs, and move slowly to the next level, which is creating the enterprises, and then to the bigger last phase, which is about creating industries. And you'll see the need of this, because already we are struggling as a country in terms of rural-urban migration, and we need to localize our industries in rural areas, because it shows that the majority of people that are, for example, in Gauteng or Cape Town, those big metros, are here because of looking for greener pastures. Yet we have that in our own communities. We have indigenous knowledge that is so vast that if we can just focus on that alone in those communities, we can do a lot. We focus also on infrastructure development, because we think that is a gap that is existing, where now if we can unlock that, a lot of initiatives can become sustainable. If we were to put, for example, an extraction laboratory next to where the medicinal plants are, it is a big plus for that community, because then you'll have a huge industry that will be created out of that. And in that process, then you start bringing other things, because you need to get the products to the market. You start putting your access roads that were never there before, and any other relevant issues within the value chain that will need to be added. So it's a lot of work that we still need to do. And I think even in terms of the latest strategies are still aligning to that, the integrated rural development sector strategy that was approved in 2023, looking at those pillars. I think the three pillars, the three first pillars are relevant to this discussion, which is the infrastructure development again, then the second one being industrial development, and then we have the education and skills development. And when you look at education and skills, we have, our older generation that have all that knowledge that needs to be passed to the younger generation. I think the other issue of trust that we have been struggling with, if you have family members that are young and the older generation pass that knowledge, I think they will have more trust than sharing that with a stranger like myself. But again, community mobilization is required in that aspect, so that you make them to feel like they are part of the entire value chain process, and the bottom-up approach, I think, is critical for us, and I think that is what we've been driving in terms of community mobilization, so that the knowledge holders are part of the discussions right from the beginning, and we don't just push things to them.
But is there a prioritization of traditional leaders? Because rural development, if you're talking community mobilization, in an environment where there are so many conflicts as to who's the rightful king, chief, regent, what is the role of the traditional leaders, or do you have a strategy to make sure that they can play the rightful role they can? Because the land they are on is the very land where these indigenous herbs are either being decimated by reckless urban sprawl, where people just building homes everywhere, estates, shopping centers. Is there a deliberate way of including or involving them?
Yes, they are actually, the starting point is with the traditional leaders. So when we get information about indigenous knowledge information that is somewhere in those rural areas. And maybe we have been approached by the indigenous knowledge holders themselves. Before we do anything, we go to the traditional leaders with them so that they don't think that we are undermining them and we are coming to their territory to come and do certain things. And, so the community mobilization strategy, that is why we have a unit that deals specifically with that. It is aimed at getting all the stakeholders involved. So we cannot do anything in those areas without first going to the kings and queens and the Makoshi, the Indunas, all of them. So that is a starting point. And we have found that it works better because I think even in terms of other projects, apart from IKS-related projects, we have realized that when you start a project without involving them, then there's a pushback and very common things where, for example, you just want to put, a different innovation that will provide a basic service. It will come with a lot of things, but when you have approached them, it becomes easy. Everything becomes smooth.
All right, let's get questions and comments from the floor. Everybody raise your hand if you won't be able to sleep if you don't ask your question. I am counting 4 hands. Let's start, 5 hands. So let's start here. Let's take all the questions, and when you ask your question, identify yourself, please, and direct the question to one of the panel members if you may. And panel members, please record. I might not be able to remember who asked which question, so that when we close, you can address that. Right here.
Thank you, Mr. Khomiswana. Good morning, everyone. My name is Felicity Matebula from the University of Limpopo. I'm a master's candidate and an innovator. My question is directed to everybody, I believe, but if one person can take it, maybe I could be answered. So my question is, do you believe we are boxing indigenous knowledge? And I say this because in different spaces that I've entered, and this one as well, I do feel my innovation often takes the backseat as people need to decide if it's indigenous enough or modern. And just to give you insight, my innovation is a polymer, it's hydrogels. So what you see inside your diapers, that cotton or crystal looking thing that absorbs water and then expands. So we apply it in agriculture and it holds and absorbs water from the root of the plant. We incorporate indigenous knowledge into that. As I have said, it's an existing product, but ours is the first ever biodegradable and organic and one that incorporates indigenous knowledge. So we replace certain chemicals with plants, such as your alu, and create some of our ingredients from scratch using indigenous knowledge methods. But I enter rooms like this.
Biodegradable diapers.
No, biodegradable hydrogel.
Well, but it will give us biodegradable diapers in the
No,
end.
the diapers is the cotton-looking or crystal-looking thing inside the diaper that absorbs water and expands. That is a hydrogel. So that hydrogel we apply in agriculture. The diaper was just to give you.
It was an example of.
Yes, so
of
you
weight.
can.
Okay.
Yes. So when I enter rooms like this, people have to decide if my innovation is indigenous or not. And unfortunately, even in this room, I've heard some people, you would ask a general question, and even yesterday, but it would be diverted towards the medicine part of indigenous knowledge. So how does this then affect the investments and all these efforts put into preserving our heritage when we are only preserving one niche? And I'd just like to know from the panelists to say, in your positions, given the institutions that you represent, are there regulations put in place, some strategies maybe that you're working on, but also individually as a person with your insights and expertise, do you believe what I see as a problem is a problem? And if yes, where could we move from here?
You mean the boxing of indigenous knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. Who's going to take that? Not now, but just let me know that it has been adopted. Okay. Ben will adopt that question, Felicity. The next question right here. Thank you. Thank you very much for that question.
Thank you, Tate Khomiaswane. My question is on the framework. Dr. Kaiser Tembo. By the way, my name is Patience from the Department of Agriculture. We speak of frameworks as government, and when we look at the timelines, they are quite long and broad, while at the same time, our communities are struggling. How can we shorten these time frames? That goes also to the issue of the South African Medicines Act, which really could be updated, as it was said. Because when we walk in a pharmacy, you will find a product with all these concoctions. And from a referral from a friend or a family, you buy it and it works. But it will be clearly marked that it is not approved by SAPRA. But it works. So when it works, it means it's not that bad, right? I'll just leave it there.
All right. Well, give or take side effects. Okay, Dr. Tembo, that's yours. It lands right on your doorstep, right? No return to sender. Thank you for that question. All right, this side. Go ahead.
Dumelar. My name is Mumpati Khumanyane Mudimokhale. My question goes to SAPRA and IDC. In our company, we do with donkey milk. So 2 years back or last year, we approached Northwest Provincial Hospital where we should supply them with donkey milk because we wanted to start a donkey milk bank. But now we are told that we need to consult SAPRA. But now SAPRA, they are not approachable. You go to their website, try to get the relevant person, you talk to the machine forever. So I just want to find out what would be the relevant people to talk to. The second question goes to IDC.
Well, the IDC is not here.
It's not there.
Well, at least not on this panel.
Oh, thank you. Areba Tlogel.
All right. As out of curiosity, what does donkey milk do?
Donkey milk, comparing to donkey milk compared to mashiamme alitsele, it's 99% close to mashialitsele. And donkey milk can replace breast milk. And it's very healthy.
Are you kidding me?
And donkey milk, you can use it to alleviate asthma. You can use donkey milk to also as a supplement for people who are diabetic and other stuff. There's a lot that can get from donkey milk. You can also use it for cosmetics products.
Wow, I owe donkeys an apology. I owe donkeys. Thank you very much. You've got it right, Dr. Tembo. It's a regulatory hurdle that he's addressing. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, and a very thought-provoking conversation. My name is Nkoti Silwane. I'm from All Things Sorghum, based in Northwest. We do sorghum-based products, and we try to elevate sorghum products beyond just sorghum porridge and mqomboti. One of the products they do is popped sorghum. 2 questions from my side. One question and maybe one comment. The one comment, Department of Agriculture is not here, which could be a relevant question to them, but maybe we can have a conversation with someone, is regarding the sorghum statutory levy. I'm sure some would be aware that this levy is not imposed on other grains like maize. So now it's a bit of a concern because it makes it a bit unattractive to farmers. I'm a farmer myself as well. It's a bit unattractive to farmers because of profitability. Because it's imposed on grain, it's imposed on sorghum instead of other grains. So maybe just a throw there, how could we, together in terms of regulatory, how can we look at that regulation and see how that can be removed? And then the second question is to Dr. Daphne. I heard you mentioned infrastructure development and you were more focused on communal land. If we have access to communal land, how can we take the conversation further? My interest specifically would be for our company and the community around in terms of a sorghum processing plant. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Let's get back to our panel. Let's start with you, Dr. Daphne, because I didn't know about this sorghum levy. How does something that's so indigenous get taxed more than maize, which is not African? Oh, you have an answer, Ben? Okay, okay. Let's deal with that question, the other questions, and then we'll go to Ben, because we're almost wrapping up, so I don't want to be leaving out anything. Go ahead, Dr. Daphne.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think the conversation, as you rightfully saying, can continue. Maybe after this session we can talk and you can give us further details in terms of what you intend to do and how we can assist. It's not a problem, especially when you are saying that there is a piece of land that is available. We do have also our sister units within the department that are mainly assisting with other issues that you may also require, that will be part of that process of providing with infrastructure. So our infrastructure in most cases it must be linked to, you know, your IK. So like you're saying, if it's something that is related to that, it's fine. If there's a laboratory that is required, so the whole value chain, if it's required, we'll have a big center where every little aspect of that can be added into it. But let's have that conversation to actually hear exactly what your needs are. Thanks.
All right, she's seated right here, so, and I would like to hear about that sorghum levy even more. Ben, the sorghum levy, and also my other question, we are closing, whether we are too averse to government participation. After all, Ethiopian Airlines, the most profitable, the fastest growing airline in Africa, is 100% government owned. Why are we so scared of government ownership, but also the levy on sorghum?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks very much. Great questions. Thank you for engaging on this topic. The levy. In the maize space, which is the most common staple food crop grown in South Africa, this levy is actually doing remarkable contribution to the system. It's a statutory levy. It must be used on certain categories, such as helping small-scale farmers become established, improving the crop, providing extension work to inform the farmer about how to best grow the crop and deal with pests and diseases. So in the maize case, the recognition of the 2% levy, I'm not exactly sure what levy it is, but it's widely recognized as benefiting the farmer. And yes, I do realize that it is cutting then into the profits, but nevertheless the support of improved products and extension services that help the farmer recognized. Then coming back to your second question, state-owned entities. You mentioned Ethiopian Airlines. We have a case study on South African Airlines, which was also largely owned, and things did not go so well. We have other state-owned entities as well that they are not the best models for development. Nevertheless, state-owned entities have an important role, and there are some shining examples in South Africa. So your question is, why are we not doing more of them, but doing it carefully to make sure that things go effectively? There are
especially, Ben, sorry, especially where private sector investment might not be forthcoming yet. De-risking so that we can say, you may come in here because we as the government are willing to put money into it. That's how I meant it.
Great. So a couple of responses, and recognizing that different sectors have different dynamics. In the health space specifically, our Department of Health is amongst the best in the world in procuring cheap medicines. Amongst the best in the world, and this means that we can access medicines for all of the people of South Africa. Our investment into health, if it was less, we would not be able to procure medicines for everyone, but because our Department of Health is so good at getting cheap medicines, they are able to procure enough for South Africa. So their key interest is in low-cost medicines. If you are trying to develop an industry that produces medicines in South Africa, it's a very difficult environment because Department of Health, if you're producing something they're interested in, they will insist on getting the best price. And establishing a company is difficult and costly. Some of you will definitely know that. And so the tensions between local manufacturing, technology localization, preferential procurement, and in the health space, low-cost medicines is creating a difficulty in this area. But I'm agreeing with you. The state needs to make some key choices about which areas we want to grow, and we should be investing in state-owned entities and support to the private sector to fulfill the demand that is required by that sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Durham. Let's get closing remarks from Dr. Kaiser Tembo. There were two questions, I think, delivered express overnight to you.
Thanks, Chair. There was a question about shortening the regulatory framework development. That unfortunately, if one has been in this field for quite some time, you'll understand the complexities that comes with coming up with a framework. There is a lot of work that goes in. There's a lot of consultations that goes in, even some pushbacks to a point where you can even end up in the courts. So before finalizing a regulatory framework, you need to make sure that it is relevant to what you want to regulate, and the framework is specific and relevant to that particular grouping of medicines. Just to indicate, we have, those that have gone through the Medicines Act and the regulations, you'll appreciate that there are different categories of medicines, and each of them are unique in their own sense. And you cannot take one group and want to subject it to another group of medicines framework, you are going to fail. Regarding the outdated act, Prof. Matsabisa in his feedback indicated that there is a process of amending the current act. It is called the SAPRA Amendment Bill process, and that process will be opened, I think, soon for public engagement as well, and any other thing that can be deemed to be outdated or needs to be changed, you are welcome to give your inputs at that time.
All right.
The products that are on the shelves with the disclaimer that says these products have not been assessed or evaluated by the regulator. You see, you need to appreciate that those products and their specific grouping of products that we call category D or complementary medicines, you know, vitamins, weight loss products, gym supplements, and all those things. The current Medicines Act was implemented in 1965. But only in 2013 was the first regulations for the so-called complementary medicines published for implementation. Meaning from 2012 going backward, there was nothing. And you wouldn't have subjected those products to those other products framework like Panado. It was not going to work. Now, because the regulations was only published in 2013, some of these products were already on the market before 2013. And as you know, you cannot apply the law retrospectively. Now, and it was going to be irresponsible of SAPRA as the regulator to say effective 2013, remove everything and come back. was not going to be possible. So to ensure that those products that were on the market enjoy the right of sale until SAPRA calls them up to say, now come, let's see who you are and what you are made of. That disclaimer was put solely for that reason, to say, these are products that have been on the market for so long, they have not been evaluated for their safety, quality, and efficacy, such that whoever buys them, you buy them knowing that they have not been seen. Now, fast forward 2020, as a primary step towards making those products comply, towards registration, SAPRA introduced what is called a licensing process, where any other company or individual who owns that product, manufactures it somewhere, import it somewhere, keep it somewhere for distribution or wholesaling, you need to come to SAPRA and provide information about that product. That was a primary step. Now we are about to introduce a second step where this product now has to come, the very same products that are on the market still have to come to SAPRA and validate their information, and SAPRA will tell you whether this product is legit or not. So that that process is going to happen soon through the registration process.
Thank you, Dr. Chan.
The second question about donkey.
All right, we're running out of time, sir. Please
Okay.
wrap it up. No, wrap it up because it's a question.
The second question about donkey milk, I will only address it insofar as it talks about supplements and treating asthma. Just to be clear, a supplement cannot be linked to a disease. The gentleman said it's a supplement for diabetic patients, it can't be. But for asthma, if you have data and information, please do come to SAPRA, we'll engage you. You also complain about, and which I take, and I'll put it forward as well within the organization, the frustration about getting through. On the website of SAPRA, there is a tab that says contact us. If you click that tab, it's going to give you a drop-down menu. And under each section, there are individual head of divisions in there. Even my name is there. So those are the key people. Cell numbers are there, contact numbers are there, as opposed to coming through reception. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. This is very helpful information. I'll be frank, I didn't know much about SAPRA myself. Thank you for that clarification. DTIC, in closing, just your remarks on the point I made about government ownership, but also the cycles to registering intellectual property, etc., etc. Just your closing remarks. All right.
Thank you for your question. How I wanted to answer your question initially when you asked it was, maybe let's go back a little bit to the role of government, right? Role of government is about catalyzing economic activities, is about addressing market failures where it can. It's about also regulation and legislative. So you are right, we have a history of having established government-owned entities that run our business. And as Ben already alluded, we have had some successes and somewhat some failures. I think the stance of our government now is to ensure that you drive private ownership as much as possible, and government comes in terms of catalyzing that and just making sure that whatever it is that we put on the ground, we can support it. You can see it, our incentives, because there are many incentives that assist companies to sort of establish factories, to, establish infrastructure. We facilitate trade, you do export promotion. So we will, as much as possible, use the public-private partnership stance to ensure that you get those kinds of businesses. It makes it for, I think, a better position for sustainability of those businesses. And also, secondly, I wanted to talk to the lady who was talking about boxing of IKS as well. And wanted to say, one of the things that we are advocating is that go to the market with the product that the market needs.
how you have come about with the information, as I've already said. IK is a knowledge form. It's not, a technology in itself. So when you go to the market in terms of advancing your product, if it makes sense to the buyer will buy it despite of, what form of knowledge came to make the product be on the market. So yeah, I think I'll end it at that, Chair.
All right. Thank you. And let's end in academia. Academia has a huge role to play. Listening to everything. What is your closing remark?
Thank you very much. I think listening to everything and summarizing, I gather the gist of what everyone is saying is that the future of IKS-based innovation depends on three things in my feeling here. It's trust, it's evidence, and it's investment. And trust ensures that communities are recognized partners and beneficiaries. Evidence comes from your research, development, and innovation, which feeds the credibility for market acceptance. And then investment is needed for the requisite skills, resources, and infrastructure to move innovations from laboratory and community into sustainable enterprises. And when we see these elements come together with an enabling regulatory and policy framework, we can see that IKS can become a powerful driver for health innovation, economic inclusion, and sustainable development. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much to our panel members.